what we are trying to do in this administration is we are trying to de-risk our relationship with China. There's 6, 7 strategic industries that we saw during COVID that the Chinese were not reliable suppliers. We're also seeing with rare earth magnets that they've imposed export controls. So we are going to become self-sufficient and dominant in those areas.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent warning Maria the U.S. can no longer rely on China to supply America with rare earth minerals. Experts from the Energy Fair Trade Coalition calling for an investigation into the Chinese minerals trade with America, warning about the potential weaponization of those resources. China is one of the largest exporters of rare earth minerals, sending $119 million worth to America last year. I want to bring in Executive Director of the Energy Fair Trade Coalition, Bret Manley. Bret, good morning. And one of the things that the Wall Street Journal has reported is that the Chinese, in the middle of these trade negotiations, began to restrict their exports of rare earth minerals that were critical for our defense industry.
Yeah, that's right. And I appreciate you having me on this morning. And I think that cuts to something that President Trump is keenly aware of, and that's the concept of leverage. And if you turn the economy into a service-based economy and you give foreign countries the ability to control the inputs to our critical materials here, whether it's defense systems or power systems or food systems, you're really giving other countries leverage over the United States. And we've seen Trump, in a variety of things, really try to turn the tails on competitors in terms of leverage. And what they're doing here, by incentivizing investment in critical minerals here at home, is trying to bring that here to the States. But really, I think it's a three-prong approach that they need to take. One is the investment. We're glad to see the DOE announcement from Friday about new money into critical minerals. But two, we really have to cut regulations that prohibit the ability of Americans to develop these things here. We have a lot of these materials, but frankly, we end up shipping them overseas for processing because the processing power is elsewhere, either because it's cheaper or it's faster, or we don't have it here. And a lot of times it's because we restrict the building of these things through environmental concerns or just sheer regulation. The final piece of the puzzle is enforcing import bans we have against things like critical minerals from China with ties to forced labor. And you've seen the Trump administration increase their enforcement of these things. Just recently, Hanwha Qcells had their shipments into the United States seized by CBP for ties to forced labor. And of course, they also own the Philly shipyard. So these are really global companies that do business in the United States, and the incentive should be for them to manufacture these products here. It's both good for us in the short term, but certainly in long-term national security. And
we're starting to see that in particular in Nevada with some mining and some explorations and actually some accidental finds in the state of Nevada. The U.S. Energy Department took action to secure our domestic critical minerals and materials. They issued notices of funding opportunities worth nearly $1 billion to advance production in America's supply chain, Bret. Is this a good step, do you think? Does this help us kind of fight back against China?
Yeah, it's an excellent step. And as I said, it's one of the three prongs, right? You need the financial incentive to invest here, but I think the president can take it a step further. Invoke the Defense Production Act. Allow these projects, to get around some of the local building or permitting regulations. We hear the administration talk about this a lot. Permitting is a very slow process. It inhibits building, it inhibits growth. Invoke the Defense Production Act, allow access to the money, and allow it to flow quickly into projects so it can be stood up and proven in a short time frame. Additionally, we're seeing a lot of advancements with AI. We should encourage these folks to take advantage of AI manufacturing processes as they get better. The only way we're going to compete is if we're more efficient. Certainly the standard of living we have here, wages are going to be higher, living conditions are going to be higher, certain things are going to be more expensive. To the extent that we can improve efficiency, we should take advantage of that as well.
What are President Trump's ultimate goals here? Is obviously to make the world dependent on American energy, certainly, but really protect the grid, make America so energy dominant that we are protected in a national security sense. Maria spoke with Energy Secretary Chris Wright about all of this. Watch.
President Trump has sold U.S. energy around the world. The interest is just tremendous. Who wouldn't rather buy from a secure ally as opposed to a threatening foe? But President Trump is a tenacious salesman, a tenacious negotiator, and you're seeing these dramatic changes of where energy supplies are coming from. Our allies abroad, their dominant source of energy that's imported is going to be the United States.
Bret, your reaction?
No, he's absolutely right. And you can see this back in the first Trump administration when he criticized Europe for relying on Russian oil. And what has happened? You see this now when they're trying to end the war in Ukraine. The European Union is still relying on imports of oil from Russia. You're seeing this play out in real time on the world stage. President Trump is thinking, what happens to the United States 10, 20, 30 years from now? We may not always be in this dominant military position. Technology changes rapidly. We need to ensure that the energy we have that fuels our economy is produced here in the United States so that we don't have, so another country doesn't have leverage over us. And I think the president understands that keenly, and a lot of the world is catching up to where he was 8 years ago.
No, that's absolutely true. Jonathan Fahey, I want to take this to you because, you know, the security of the energy grid is something that from basically whether it's a hacker that could come from China, from Russia, the security of the energy grid has been very much discussed, and President Trump is very aware of this as well.
Yeah, that's something he does seem to be really tuned in on, is because there's a lot of vulnerability there and we need to protect it. And a lot of times people think of war and just like what's going on in Ukraine. But if somebody could take out the energy grid, they could cripple our economy in so many ways. And yeah, Bret, do you have any thoughts on what steps should be taken to secure the energy grid going forward that aren't being done right now?
Well, I certainly, it's an all-of-the-above approach, right? Because, there's multiple vulnerabilities on a grid, whether it's through, electronic means like a hacker, or you have a dam explodes or something like that. So we certainly need large amounts of baseload capacity. If there's an issue in one part of the country or one part of the grid, you can flux from another part of the grid to fill that energy need. The only way you're going to accomplish that is if you have more power than you use so that you're a net exporter. So the president wisely is choosing to bring those things to the United States so that we manufacture them here, so we can be a net exporter of energy. And in a net exportation market, you're really in a secure position going forward.
Not just, there's the national security side of this, and then also, the discussion about can the grid handle all the AI data centers that are out there. That's to be determined. Bret Manley, thank you so much for being here, Bret. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right.